If you're new to walleye fishing, don't wait for every fish to leave deep water on some perfect date. That isn't how the movement works. Walleye may stay deep most of the day, then move within casting distance for less than an hour. Your job is to recognize that short feeding window, stand in the right place before it begins, and cover the water in a simple order. Use this rule. Walleye move close when shallow water becomes a safer and easier place to feed. 3 things help that happen: food, low light, and comfortable water. You don't need special instruments to judge all 3. You need to recognize useful combinations. Picture a rocky point near sunset with a steady breeze blowing toward it. The wind disturbs the surface, reduces the light below it, and pushes tiny food and baitfish toward the rocks. That point gives walleye both cover and a meal. Now picture a flat, calm shoreline under bright midday sun. It offers far less reason for them to leave deeper water. When you're deciding whether to fish shallow, ask one question. Does this water look like a better feeding area now than it did a few hours ago? If the light is fading, the breeze is building, or baitfish are appearing, the answer may be yes. The season tells you where to begin, but conditions tell you when to be there. Spring is usually the easiest season to understand. As the water warms, many walleye approach spawning areas made of gravel, rock, or firm sand. Incoming creeks and mild current can also attract them. These areas are especially promising when deeper water is close enough for the fish to retreat easily. Don't depend on a calendar date. Spring timing changes with the lake, latitude, and weather. Instead, look for warming water, rock or current, and nearby depth. Check the current fishing season and any spawning closures before you go. After spawning, the fish may become scattered or less aggressive. If the shallow rocks seem empty, don't immediately abandon the area. Move one step deeper. Imagine the bottom as a ramp extending away from shore. The place where that ramp suddenly becomes steeper is the first break. Walleye can rest along that break, then slide onto the rocks when they're ready to feed. From shore, cast diagonally instead of throwing straight toward the middle of the lake. A diagonal cast keeps your lure near the depth change longer. From a boat or kayak, remain outside the break and cast toward the shallow side. That lets your lure travel down the same route the fish use. Summer is when beginners often think the walleye have disappeared. During bright, calm daylight, many fish do hold deeper, beside tall weeds, along shaded structure, or near offshore humps. But they don't necessarily remain there all evening. As direct sunlight leaves the water, small fish often move toward weed edges, reefs, points, and rocky banks. Walleye can follow them into surprisingly shallow water. On a clear lake, the strongest movement may not happen until dusk or after dark. In stained water, under cloud cover, or with a useful breeze, it can begin much earlier. This gives you a practical timing rule. In clear, calm water, arrive early but expect the better action later. In darker or wind-ruffled water, start checking the shallows sooner. If you arrive exactly at sunset, you're already late. You should be finding the bottom, checking your knots, and learning your casting angles while you can still see them. Fall creates another good beginner opportunity. Cooling water and dying vegetation force baitfish to concentrate. Look for the remaining green weeds, because healthy vegetation is more likely to hold oxygen and prey than brown weeds collapsing against the bottom. Rocky points, current areas, and the outside edges of those green weeds can all produce. Watch the surface near sunset. A few small fish flicking beside a windblown point can be more useful than a complicated fishing report. If that point also has deeper water nearby, start there. Cover its shallow top first, then work down its first break. Now let's narrow down the exact spot. The best beginner locations combine a shallow feeding area with a quick route to deeper water. Think of the shallow area as a table and the nearby drop as a hallway. Walleye wait in the hallway, rise onto the table to eat, and leave when the light or water conditions change. A rocky point is a good table. So is the outside edge of a weed bed, a reef, or a gravel bank beside a drop. A creek mouth or safe current seam can work because moving water carries food. You aren't searching for the deepest hole in the lake. You're searching for shallow food beside an easy escape route. When several spots look similar, let wind choose for you. Begin on the shore receiving a manageable breeze. You want enough surface chop to disturb the light, not waves that make your footing or boat control unsafe. If the wind is too strong, fish a protected pocket beside the windy area. Food can still collect there without forcing you into dangerous water. Water clarity changes your approach too. In clear water, make longer casts, keep your shadow off the shallows, and avoid banging tackle against the boat. In stained water, fish may remain close during daylight because the water creates its own shade. Completely muddy water can make your lure difficult to find, though. If possible, fish the edge where dirty water meets slightly clearer water. That color change gives walleye cover and enough visibility to hunt. Once you've chosen a feature, look for one small irregularity. Don't fish a perfectly straight weed edge if there's an inward bend nearby. On a point, try its windblown side and the tip where water wraps around it. Along a rocky bank, look for the place where fine gravel changes to fist-sized rock. An especially useful rule is to begin where two features meet. That might be rock meeting weeds, moving water touching slack water, or a point crossing a depth break. Each feature gives fish a reason to stop, and their intersection concentrates those reasons in one small target. Your first setup can stay simple. A medium-light spinning rod around 7 feet long, a matching reel, and line you can cast comfortably will handle most of this fishing. Braid in the 6 to 10 pound range with a short leader provides good sensitivity, but plain 8-pound monofilament is perfectly usable. You don't need a specialized walleye rod before your first trip. Bring 3 presentation options: a few light jigs with soft plastic minnows, a shallow-running crankbait, and a slip float if you want to fish slowly. Check local bait and hook rules before using live bait. Start with the crankbait when you need to search. Cast it across the shallow top of a point, flat, or rocky bank and retrieve it steadily. You want the lure to tick an occasional rock or brush the tops of weeds. That contact tells you it's near the useful depth. If it digs continuously and snags, raise your rod tip or use a shallower running lure. If it never contacts anything and you get no bites, try a slightly deeper model. Around dusk or after dark, slow down and keep the retrieve steady. A predictable vibration is easy for a walleye to track and easy for you to repeat. Next, use a jig to check the first break. An 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce jig is a sensible starting range, depending on wind, current, and depth. Choose the lightest one that still lets you feel bottom occasionally. A jig that crashes into every rock is harder to control and much easier to lose. Cast beyond your target and let the jig sink on a slightly controlled line. Lift the rod tip gently, then let the lure fall again. Watch the line where it enters the water, because many bites happen during that fall. If the line jumps, moves sideways, or stops sinking sooner than expected, reel down until you feel weight and make a firm, smooth hook set. You don't need a huge swing. Use the slip float when you believe fish are present but they won't chase. Set the depth so a small jig and soft plastic or legal live bait hangs just above the weeds or bottom. Don't drag it underneath the vegetation. Keep light contact with the line instead of staring only at the float. When the float disappears, reel until the line tightens, then sweep the rod back smoothly. Whatever lure you choose, organize your casts. Begin parallel to the bank or weed edge. Make the next cast at roughly a 45-degree angle, then cast straight outward. This small fan pattern crosses several depths without becoming random. When a cast touches a distinct rock patch, catches the edge of healthy weeds, or suddenly reaches deeper water, remember that direction. Repeat it. If you catch a fish, repeat the same angle, retrieve speed, and approximate depth immediately. Walleye often travel through a narrow lane. Moving your cast only a few feet can miss it. Don't become loyal to empty water. With a moving crankbait, several clean casts at each angle are enough for an initial test. A jig or float deserves more time, particularly in cold water, but a point is still a test station, not a campsite. If you've covered the shallow top and the nearby break without seeing bait, feeling contact, or getting a bite, move to the next feature. Here's the troubleshooting rule that saves the most wasted trips. Change one variable at a time, and change depth first. Beginners often replace the lure, color, scent, and retrieve all at once. Even if that works, they learn nothing. Instead, fish the shallow top, then its edge, then the first deeper section. If you locate fish but they won't commit, slow the presentation or use the float. Change depth first, speed second, and lure style last. That order follows the fish before blaming the tackle. Let the water help you decide whether to stay. Baitfish dimpling the surface, birds watching one bank, green weeds, insects collecting in a windblown pocket, or small perch following your lure all suggest food is nearby. Dead weeds, stagnant-smelling water, and a complete lack of life suggest moving. You can even locate a break without electronics. Make the same cast several times and notice where your crankbait first touches bottom or how long your jig sinks before landing. When bottom contact begins closer to shore, you've reached the rising slope. Remember that distance and cast there again as the light fades. Avoid 3 beginner mistakes. Don't assume deeper is always better. Feeding walleye may rise onto a reef or suspend beside tall weeds. Don't use more jig weight than you can control. And don't spend the best 20 minutes tying knots or discovering unsafe footing. Arrive early and prepare for the window. Be careful when catching fish from substantial depth, especially when warm surface water adds stress. If you plan to release your catch, a shallow feeding window can be a better choice than pulling fish from the deepest marks available. Handle fish with wet hands, support the body, remove the hook efficiently, and release promptly. Know the current season, size, and possession rules before fishing. For your next trip, choose one legal public spot with a rocky point, green weed edge, creek mouth, or current seam, and deeper water nearby. Arrive before the sun leaves the water. Search the shallow top with a crankbait, work the first break with a light jig, and switch to a float if fish seem unwilling to chase. If nothing happens, adjust depth before changing everything else. You don't need to predict where every walleye in the lake went. Find one shallow table beside a deeper hallway, arrive before low light, and cover it in an organized order. When food, light, and comfortable water come together, that's when deep water walleye can move close enough for a beginner to catch them.